Hey, fifth grade, we're going to be doing our reading lessons online. So I'm going to read you the next chapter in Jeremy Thatcher, Dragon Hatcher. Chapter 6, Tiamat. The dragon squirmed, sending a message that felt like, "Let me go." Jeremy hesitated, then released his hold on the creature. Flapping its leathery wings, it flew to the top of his bookcase. The moment it landed, Jeremy was struck with another wave of hunger. Clearly, he wasn't going to get any answers until the beast was fed. He listened for the sound of the back door. As soon as he was sure his mother was safely out in the yard, he darted down the stairs for more chicken livers. He took the dragon with him, just to be sure nothing happened while he was out of the room. When the dragon had finally sated his hunger, it sat on Jeremy's desk, preening its scales with its beaky nose. Jeremy stared at it. "All right," he said. "Give. Why didn't Mom say anything about you?" No answer. Jeremy tried again. Closing his eyes, he formed a mental image of his mother standing in the doorway. Then he tried to attach a sense of questionness to the picture. The dragon responded by sending him a pair of pictures. The first showed Jeremy standing in front of his mother with the dragon perched on his shoulder. Then the dragon faded from the image until all Jeremy could see was himself. Standing there without the dragon, he looked, as his mother had said, ridiculously twitchy. The pictures triggered a memory of something Jeremy had read. "Do you mean Mom couldn't see you?" he thought. "Are you invisible to her?" The dragon puffed a little cloud of smoke and sent Jeremy a confused jumble of colors. Jeremy frowned. If he wanted to communicate with the dragon, he was going to have to learn to think in pictures. Probably not a bad habit for someone who wanted to be an artist. But it was going to take a lot of practice before they could talk easily. Of course, the dragon was just a baby. In fact, how young it was, the fact that they could communicate at all was pretty amazing. Jeremy wondered just how smart the beast was going to get. "Well, if you stay invisible, it's going to be a lot easier to keep you a secret," he said, "as long as you don't do anything else to attract my parents' attention." He glanced at the clock on his dresser. The lawn. How long could he stall before his mother got upset? It wasn't that he didn't want to help, though he certainly had better things to do with his time than work on the lawn, like drawing, for instance. But if he didn't get things under control here, who knew what kind of disaster he would find when he came back? Setting his alarm to ring in 10 minutes, Jeremy picked up the book Miss Priest had given him, the one written by S.H. Elves. He had skimmed 20 pages before it occurred to him to see if the book had an index. It did. Feeling silly, he began flipping through the back pages. He decided to start with taming. The index had a word, but rather than listing a page to turn to, it said in dark letters, "Don't even think of such a thing." A sudden squawk from the dragon distanced him. Turning, he saw that it had gotten into a fierce wrestling match with a dirty sock. As Jeremy watched, dragon and sock rolled across the floor and disappeared under his bed. Jeremy decided to start at the top of the index and skim straight through. When he got to the word milk, he remembered something he had read at the library. Flipping eagerly to the proper page, he found the following. Though dragons are best known for rampaging about through the countryside, eating sheep and shepherd alike, many of them are reputed to have a deep fondness for milk. In at least 2 instances, we are told of a village or castle that kept one of the great worms at bay by offering it a trough of milk every day. The dragon would drink the milk, then, hunger sated, it would return to its cave for a long nap. This method was particularly effective in the case of the dragon of Lambton Hall. Whence this fondness for milk, no one is quite certain. Some think it may stem from the fact that dragon mothers cannot nurse their young, which leaves the little beast with a lifelong craving for milk. Others think it has to do with the primal fluid of the universe. Many simply list it as one of the mysteries of dragondom. In any event, while the method is hardly foolproof, it is certainly worth trying if you should ever be faced with a marauding dragon. Or dragonlet, added Jeremy, as he closed the book. He felt a little foolish. He had read the story of the dragon of Lambton Hall at the library. Why hadn't it occurred to him to try the milk trick? He glanced at the clock beside his bed. If he didn't get outside soon, his mother would start to get cranky. Dashing down the stairs, he slipped into the kitchen and filled his saucer with milk. He looked at it, decided it might not be enough, and got out a soup bowl. After a second, he decided to take the entire carton of milk back to his room, too. Setting the soup bowl on the floor beside his bed, Jeremy poured in some milk. Within seconds, the dragon crawled out from under the bed, its flickery red tongue darting ahead of it. When it found the milk, it plunged its head into the bowl and began slurping. Soon it had finished the entire bowl, a huge amount for such a tiny dragon. Jeremy poured some more milk into the bowl, but the dragon turned away and flapped its wings. Its stomach was so full that for all its efforts, it could get no more than a few inches off the floor. Making a little growling noise, the dragon gave up the effort at flight, sank its claws into the sheets, and began to climb the bed. When it reached the top, it curled up on Jeremy's pillow and fell fast asleep. Jeremy smiled. If the book was right, the milk should hold it for the rest of the day. If it wasn't, he didn't know what he was going to do. When Jeremy returned from helping his mother, the dragon was no longer on the pillow. The only mark of its presence was a small brown spot where its breath had scorched the pillowcase. "Dragon," he said softly. "Dragon, where are you?" A little swirl of blue trickled into his brain. "Where are you?" asked Jeremy again. The colors moved in a slow circle. It took Jeremy a moment to realize the dragon was sleeping. But where? Jeremy finally found the beast curled up in his sock drawer. Even though he knew babies needed to sleep, he couldn't help himself. Reaching down, he scooped the dragon into his hands. It snorted and opened one eye. The expression on its face was cranky, and Jeremy's head began to swirl with irritated shades of brown and green. But the dragon's mood passed quickly. Soon it had settled into the place on Jeremy's shoulder it seemed to have chosen as its special spot. "Let's see if we can name you," said Jeremy. Plucking the dragon from his shoulder, he carried it to his desk. "Stay there for a minute," he said firmly. The dragon's long tongue flicked out and back. Jeremy found the list of great dragons that he had made at the library. "How about Fafnir?" he asked. The dragon yawned. Jeremy crossed the name off the list. "Smog?" The dragon curled its lip. Jeremy was just as glad. Smog was the dragon in The Hobbit, and it had been a particularly wretched beast. "Ouroboros?" The dragon snorted, sending out a tiny puff of smoke. Jeremy wasn't sure if it was reacting to the name or his attempt to pronounce it. He crossed it off anyway. The dragon was no happier with Orm, Emphax, Heart's Blood, Menth, or Ruth. It wasn't until Jeremy suggested Tiamat that a flood of approving colors came swirling through his head. "Tiamat?" he asked again. The dragon squirmed with pleasure. Its tail tied itself in a knot. Jeremy smiled. "Tiamat it is," he said. He was pleased. He had never felt really at ease with a new pet until he had named it. Jeremy hesitated. Maybe "it" was the wrong word. After all, according to Babylonian mythology, the original Tiamat was the mother dragon who had created the world. So Tiamat must be a female name. Did that mean his dragon was a female too? Though the answer didn't really come as a word, there was no doubt it was a positive response. Jeremy smiled. One mystery solved. He had a girl dragon, and her name was Tiamat. He looked at the dragon nervously. Had he really named her, or had he just found the name she had wanted all along? The thought opened his mind to a whole list of questions he'd been trying to ignore, such as, where had this thing really come from? And what had Mr. Eves meant when he said, "It wants you"? And most important, what was he supposed to do now? He closed his eyes and tried to send these questions to the dragon. Aside from some general puzzlement, he got no response. "Well, what did I expect?" he said aloud. "You're still a baby, practically brand new." He stroked Tiamat's tiny head and wondered once again how big she was going to get. Though he hadn't really meant it as a question, she answered him anyway, and the image that formed in his mind left no doubt what the answer was. Big. Jeremy swallowed hard, but before he could think anything back at her, a voice yelled, "Hey, Jer, are you up there?" "Sure," he yelled back. "Come on up, Spess." He turned to the dragon, which was chewing on the end of one of his paintbrushes, and asked, "Now will he be able to see you or not?" Tiamat flew up to his shoulder without answering. "Where did you go yesterday?" asked Specimen, bursting into the room. "I looked all over for you. I've never seen anyone run so fast." "Do you blame me?" asked Jeremy, turning so that the dragon would be in clear view. He waited for Spess to say something about Tiamat, but Specimen only shrugged and shook his head. "I'm just glad it was you and not me," he said. "Thanks," replied Jeremy, a trifle bitterly. Spess missed his tone. He looked troubled. "My sister Mindy said she saw you walking with Mary Lou this morning," he said at last. Jeremy groaned. "Your sister's mouth is bigger than Alaska." "Well," insisted Spess, "were you?" "No, she was walking with me. I had my arms full and couldn't run away." Spess nodded as if that answer satisfied him. Then, as if a new thought had just struck him, he added, "Full of what?" "Full of books about—" Jeremy decided to be daring. About dragons. You always did like that kind of stuff, said Specimen. His tone made it sound like he thought there was something slightly strange about that fact. Want to work on our entries for the art contest? He asked, changing the subject. I have to go out and finish raking, said Jeremy with a sigh. The dragon crawled out, down his arm, and onto his desk. She stared at Specimen as if memorizing his features. The question she sent Jeremy seemed to translate as friend or foe. Friend, thought Jeremy, old friend. Specimen proved it by helping Jeremy rake. When they were done, Jeremy went upstairs to check on the dragon, who was once more snoozing among his socks. He moved one pair that was too close to her nose, hoping his mother wouldn't notice the little scorch marks. Come with me, he said to Spess, who had watched in mystification while Jeremy peered into the sock drawer. I want you to help me find something. What? A magic shop.